All right, so in this video, we are going to take a look at how to create a residual plot in Excel. So you should be at the point, if you're not, you need to go back and make sure you're at this point, otherwise you can't move forward. You should be at the point where you have the scatter plot of your data. I've put some labels on the X and Y axis, I've given it a title. You should have a regression line through your data, and the equation of my line is seen right there. You need all these things to be able to do this next part. And so now our goal is going to be, let's make a residual, a plot of the residuals. And so I think it's important, for us to remember what residuals are. And so residuals are the distance from individual data points back to the line. And so if I look at my graph here, if I zoom in and just give it a second, we'll come back. So if I grab any individual point and I find the distance from that point down to the line, that is a residual, right? So this point down to the line, that's the residual. And the distance from this point to that line is the residual. If they're below the line, that residual is negative. If it's above the line, that residual is positive. And so the way the Excel or Desmos or whatever it may be is calculating the line is it's finding those residuals, it's finding every single residual, and it is squaring them to make them all positive so that the negatives don't affect it. And then it's finding the smallest sum or the smallest adding up of all those residuals to create a line that fits it the best. And so what we want to do is I actually want to look at a graph or a plot of just the residuals. I want to figure out what's the distance between each individual point and the line, and then I want to look at a graph of those things because that graph can tell me a lot. And so the way that we're going to do that is by using Excel here, which is just a little bit laggy because I have a lot of data in there. But if I look at my data, I have my data organized over here. You'll see there's this option called Data, this tab at the top. And you'll see hopefully something called Analysis Tools. Right now, if I click my Analysis Tools, I don't have this tool pack on. I think the default might be for it to be off. You need this tool pack in order to do it, so I'm going to check that that's on. I want it to be able to do things in that tool pack, so I click OK. And I'll notice a little button appears for me to do this data analysis. And so I want to do some data analysis on my data over here. So I click Data Analysis. And you'll see lots of options in here. There's lots of things that it can do, correlation, but what I'm looking for it to do is regression. We're doing linear regression. I find the regression option and I click OK. And then it tells me, okay, well, what are your Y and your X values? Notice it puts Y first, which is a little confusing, but it says, okay, go grab all your Y values. So I'm gonna click my first Y value, and I want everything of the Y's. So I click and drag down until I get to my last one. Those are all my Y values. And so then I want my X values are going to start up here at 0. So I'm going to grab 0 as my start point and just scroll until I get all my X values too far down there. So that grabs all my X values. Notice it's got the range of my Y values and my X values. There's lots of options here. Really the only one you need to make sure you click is residuals. I want to know what the residuals are, and I want it to make a residual plot for me. So I'm going to check both of those options, and then I click OK. When I click OK, it will open up a new tab at the bottom. My data was over here in sheet 2. When I clicked OK, it made this new sheet 5, just because I've made that many already. But it puts all the data over here. And so it calculates lots of data. Lots of these are not necessarily things that we're going to be dealing with. Things that maybe you would learn later. But what you will notice is it shows my y-intercept, and that's the equation of my line, and the slope of my line. This was my y equals this number times x plus this number. That was the regression equation it used. And then down here, you notice it's calculating every single residual. So it's finding the predicted y value, and then it's subtracting it and finding the residuals here. So I can see the residuals down here that it's all found. Some of them are negative when it's below the line. Some of them are positive when it's above the line. But it's got all 700 of them. And then up here, it's got the graph. So I can make this bigger or zoom, right? So if I make it bigger, I can take a look at it and see all the residuals. And so I see at every single point how far away it is. So some of the residuals are positive, the highest being kind of up here at 6.42, and the lowest being down here at negative 3.7. And so when we look at residual plots, we don't want there to be a pattern. If there's a pattern in the residual plots, if I see something that's like quadratic, or I see something that is a very clear trend, then that means the linear function is not a good fit. Here I have some of the data above, some of the data below, and the spread of the data is not that big, right? It goes from -3 up to 6. That's not a huge spread of the data. So then this residual plot tells me that because the residuals are relatively close together and they don't have a specific pattern, that a linear function is a good fit. So the residuals tell me, the residuals show me, this visual representation shows me that linear function, a linear regression is a good idea. So it supports finding the linear regression that we found earlier, right? So I would take a screenshot of this or copy this and put it into my paper and be able to describe what I see here, talking about how spread out they are, talking about that there's no pattern, so it makes sense that it's a linear regression. So that's our residual plots using Excel.